We were running headlong to the security guard's room at the airport. What happened? Suddenly a shaggy monster jumped out at us with loud screams. Stop! That was all I managed to shout to the girls. A tense silence hung in the air. Then the monster began to approach us and whisper something about charges? Steph, what have they done to you? You'll just melt when you see him, my classmate Stephanie kept saying. She had already met our new handball coach and was now trying to persuade me to sign up for classes too. No way! Handball was the last thing I needed. But when I saw him, I just couldn't breathe. Was he Apollo himself? Mr. Gibson had just graduated from sports school. His smile literally blinded my eyes, and six-pack abs were seen through his t-shirt. Well, a new crush? Stephanie teased me. And for good reason. After half an hour, I signed up for a new team. I just couldn't take my eyes off Mr. Gibson. But I wasn't the only one who was so smart. A week later, almost all the high school girls wanted to play in our team. But they chose only the players for the first team and the reserve team. I tried my best and got into the first team. I wouldn't give them Mr. Gibson. Soon our team even began to receive prizes. Wow, if it wasn't for Mr. Gibson, we wouldn't have signed up for handball in our lives. One morning, I was driving to the airport in a hurry and couldn't believe my luck. Our team was going to a competition in another state. The day before, I traded another girl for a seat on the plane and now I was going to sit next to the coach. From this spot, I felt pleasant vibrations. But unfortunately, my plan failed. He slept sweetly all the way. We didn't even exchange a few words. We arrived earlier than expected. At first, the whole team was happy. But then it dawned on us. We landed in the wrong city. Stephanie quickly called her manager. After a couple of seconds, she said in a drooping voice that he had mixed up the tickets. The competition was taking place in another city. Everyone around just froze. I quickly googled how long it would take to get from here to the city where the competitions were held. Oh, it was only 3 hours. If we went by car, we would make it. Well done. Mr. Gibson smiled and immediately began to look for car rental services. I broke into a smile. It was a pleasure. After 15 minutes, the whole team was already heading to the rented car. I got into the backseat first and was already getting ready for a fast ride, but then it turned out that Mr. Gibson didn't know how to drive. That was quite a twist. It was good that I passed my license a month ago. However, I never had to travel such long distances before. With trembling hands, I started the car. Calm down, Bibby. Everything will work out. While I was remembering how the car starts, the girls were trying to get in. We didn't have much money with us and we couldn't rent a minivan. Well, after consulting, we decided that the thinnest girl would sit in the back seat, and Mandy, our attacker, would lie on their knees. Mandy didn't fit into in any way, and I had to push her in. It was a hard road to hoe. At first, everything was fine. I managed to gain normal speed and maneuver, but soon the team asked me to stop at the nearest diner. Girls are such girls. I didn't want to waste time, but we really needed a break. But then I noticed something strange. When everyone was trying to get into the car again, I suddenly realized that we were missing something. Wait, where's Stephanie? How could we forget the goalkeeper? I wondered, turning the car around. Everyone else, including Mr. Gibson, was just tensely silent. Steph didn't answer her phone. What happened to her at all? I drove like crazy towards the airport. The coach tried to call her, but the phone was unavailable. The girls began to suggest what could have happened to her, and the versions were one scarier than the other. As soon as we returned to the airport, we immediately ran to the security room. We burst in there and saw a tear-stained and shaggy something that looked more like a used washcloth than a person. What the hell? One of the girls blurted out. I immediately slowed down too, but suddenly looked closer. Steph? I asked timidly. A familiar voice came from under the shock of hair. Steph threw her arms around my neck, crying loudly and wailing. I thought I was going to die here, but they don't have chargers. Steph said that she just wanted to go to the bathroom, but the door of the stall jammed as luck would have it. Steph sat there for ages until the cleaning lady freed her. A good reason not to get to the competition. To be honest, during Steph's story, I could barely contain a smile. But soon everyone breathed a sigh of relief and instantly dragged the terrified goalkeeper to the car. But it turned out in the parking lot that we had nowhere to seat the newly found Steph. Our car disappeared. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. The car was stolen. We had no tickets. The competition would begin very soon. I didn't know what to do, but I didn't have to panic for a long time. Steph decided to do it for me. She suddenly sat down on the asphalt, covered her head with her hands, and burst into tears. Steph mumbled that she only brought us bad luck. Hey, come on. Mr. Gibson sat down next to her on the sidewalk and began to soothe her gently. She's lucky, apparently. I need to burst into tears too. I sat on the sidewalk and stroked Steph's back with one hand, trying to calm her down, and Googled at least some information that could help us with the other. A sudden notification from Instagram took me away from these thoughts. It was from the organizer of our competitions. They started the live of the training camp. I quickly opened the app and couldn't believe my eyes. There were players from the reserve team in beautiful new uniforms instead of us. Next to them, our manager was grinning. Is this a joke? You pig! So he deliberately set it all up to get rid of us. I was shaking with rage. No, he won't get away with it that way. Steph, finish it. We have a problem. I shouted. Steph immediately calmed down. The girls quickly gathered and even Mr. Gibson straightened out. We'll show you who the real athletes are here. I ran out onto the highway and stuck my hand out. We're not going to give in to them. The main phase of the competition will begin only later in the evening, and we will be there. I frantically waved my hands to all passing cars, but only trucks were rushing past at high speed, and there were taxi drivers who were laughing at us all the time. I'm going to get you. Suddenly, I saw another truck in the distance. This was our last chance. I gathered my thoughts and began to wave as desperately as never before. And the truck stopped. The taxi drivers immediately fell silent. I turned around and winked at Mr. Gibson. A few minutes later, we were already rushing along the highway directly towards the competition. I mentally sped the huge car up and knew one thing. We were a real team. We couldn't be broken by such nonsense. We burst into the locker room at the very last minute. Our reserve team was already preparing to come out. You should have seen their faces. Move over. I deftly commanded with an imperturbable smile. Without saying a word, they parted. Oh, I'm so formidable. Or they were all scared of Stephanie's appearance. The long road clearly didn't do her any good. In any case, that night we became the absolute champions, which was to be expected. After such a warm-up, we could immediately go to the World Training Camp. I have no doubt that we would have defeated everyone there. After the game, our manager disappeared somewhere. I doubt very much that we will ever see him again. And as for the reserve team, they kept coming up to Mr. Gibson guiltily and asking him to forgive them. It was our manager who persuaded them to betray us. Suddenly, Gibson looked up straight into my eyes. What makes you think that you need to apologize only to me? You set up the team, deceived us. Bibi is the captain of the team. Ask her. Wow, what an honor. The girls from the team and I stood and exchanged glances. Yes, we could understand the reserve team. If we had to sit on the bench all the time, we wouldn't be happy either. We forgave the girls and agreed to rotate the team members so that everyone could play. Probably we should have thought about this earlier. It's really a shame to be in the team but at the same time never play. Today we realized that in order to be one, we need to take into account everyone's opinion. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you! I carefully climbed through the window. If my mother sees me as a guy, I'm finished. There were footsteps outside the door. I jumped into bed and pulled the covers over me. But my mom didn't even come in, just shouted that she was going on a business trip again. After divorcing my dad, she worked all the time and didn't care about me, and I still wanted to talk to her heart to heart as it was in childhood. The only thing I still had was volleyball. I trained myself for many years. I decided that I would become the best. And a week ago, I was lucky. The principal brought legendary Terrence Smith to the school meeting and announced that he would be our volleyball coach. Smith said he was missing one player on the team. Everyone in the hall whispered, because the students became the best volleyball players. I was determined that the place on the team would be mine. But it turned out that Smith only trained guys. It really pissed me off because I was the best player. Well, if you need a guy, okay, I'll change into him, take a place in the team and become the captain. The selection was tough. I was nervous, and the wig was constantly slipping on its side. There were only two of us left, me and the nasty guy Nick. He took me for a rookie and said I might not even hope to make the team. And then our names were called. Well, let's see who's rookie. I was uncomfortable in my men's short, and the bandages I'd wrapped around my chest got into my skin, but that didn't stop me from beating Nick. And when he left the field, he hissed that he would take revenge on me. But I was no longer listening to him because the coach was walking towards me with a serious face. Suddenly, he smiled and said that I had passed the selection. Yes. Then the team captain, Evan, approached me. All the girls at school were crazy about him. To me, he was just a cocky jock. I would only be too happy to remove him from the captain's chair. Evan congratulated me dryly, but Smith said there was no time to talk. The first practice session would start right away. It turned out that he brought some friends from the state volleyball team to train us before the competition. If you lose, you have nothing to do in this big game, Smith said. During the set, I gave my best along with Evan. He played well, but we still didn't score a single point. At timeout, the boys lied that Evan was asking too much of them. And I decided that I should win the guys over to my side by giving them a break from training. I blurted that in my previous team, the captain always threw cool parties to relieve the tension, and supposedly my friend Alexis was having a party this Friday. If we win, I invite everyone. It was risky, but Mom was away for the whole week. The guys cheered up and we smashed the opponents. Everyone was excited about the party, but Evan didn't like it. He said briefly that he would drop by if he was free and left. Yeah, he obviously didn't like me as Alex. Let's see what he would say about beautiful Alexis. She would be able to find out all his weaknesses to remove him from the post of captain. On the day of the party, the entire volleyball team and Evan showed up. He was clearly in a bad mood. And among them was Nick, the guy from the qualifiers. I was about to protest, but the guy started asking me where Alex was. I did not lose my head and said that he was just late. Evan's expression darkened at the mention of Alex and he walked away. While everyone was dancing, I carefully sat down next to him and asked him why he was so sad. But he didn't answer and began to shower me with compliments. That was nice, of course, but right now, I needed to find his weak spot. Not flirt. I asked if he was just not ready to compete. Then Evan sighed and said that he thought he would soon be moved from the post of captain by an upstart. It's about me. I mean about Alex. Evan said volleyball was all he lived for. His voice faltered. Evan's mom was seriously ill, and maybe she didn't have much time left. Only training saved him from heavy thoughts, and recently, he promised his mother that he would become a better captain, no matter what. It blew me away. I suddenly realized that we were very similar to him. After all, volleyball was also my salvation from problems. But we were interrupted by the cry of someone from the team. Hey, we need to call Alex. He can't ignore his team like that. The phone immediately rang in my pocket, and they all stared at me. I lied that I wasn't feeling well and quickly ran upstairs. I rushed to my room and the phone kept ringing. If I dropped a call, the guys would definitely not forgive Alex. What should I do? I decided to change into Alex. I washed off my makeup and put on my pants and wig. And suddenly the door opened. Nick stood in the doorway. What the hell? He asked me what Alex was doing in Alex's room. I replied that I wanted to appear spectacularly and rolled down the banister from the second floor. Nick grinned enigmatically and left the room. I went to the mirror to adjust my wig and was horrified. A lock of my hair was sticking out from under it. As Nick noticed, I was finished. As promised, I made a spectacular descent from the banister to the first floor. And the guys from the team met me with deafening cheers. They said that the party just rocked and were very grateful for the invitation. But at that moment, the front door opened and I saw my mother on the threshold. She didn't recognize me as Alex. My legs couldn't move in terror. I had to get back into my clothes as soon as possible. While my mother kicked everyone out of the house, I hurriedly pulled on a dress in the bathroom and then went out to her. She started yelling that I was a bad daughter and didn't appreciate what she was doing for us. For this party, my mother punished me and transferred me to homeschooling. While she worked all day in her room, I couldn't go to training now, and the competition was coming up very soon. What to do? I let everyone down, but suddenly, on the day of the game, Evan called me. He said they couldn't do it without me. I was dumbfounded, so, for the sake of the team, Evan overstepped his pride and called his competitor Alex. I stood for a moment in a daze, but then I came to my senses and decided, now or never. I climbed out of the window and ran to the guys. I ran into Evan outside the locker room and just wanted to thank him for calling, as I was surrounded by guys that led to the coach. Hey, what are you doing? They shoved me into his office and Coach Smith told me even though I had been away for a long time, they had decided by a general vote that I was the new team captain. Oh my god, I've been dreaming about it! But then I met Evan's eyes. He lowered his head and silently went to the field. There was a woman in a wheelchair in the front row. And Evan went over and hugged her. It was his mother. She had come to see him, despite her illness. My stomach clenched. I wish my mom was supportive too. When the game started, Evan missed almost all the balls and constantly looked back at the first row, and then I realized that for the two of them, volleyball was more than a victory. Maybe this was their last moments together. Then I decided to screw up the first set and show Evan's mom that he was really a great captain. I sidelined the strongest players and put the weakest in the attack. The guys started making mistakes, and we quickly lost. The team was indignant. The coach told me off and put Evan back as captain. He just lit up. Under Evan's leadership, we quickly rallied and defeated them. While the guys were celebrating, Evan took me aside and thanked me. He knew I'd done it on purpose. But why? I said I wanted to be a captain. But I was sure I still had a lot to learn from him. During the award ceremony, the audience chanted the name of our team. The guys were cheering. And I was happy that I helped Evan. The referee had already picked up the cup and went to the microphone when suddenly, Nasty Nick appeared on the field. He brazenly and unceremoniously snatched the microphone from the referee and loudly declared that the attacker Alex was a liar. The guys looked at me in disbelief, and I cringed. What was he up to? Nick lunged at me and tore off my wig and shouted, "It's a girl!" Evan and the entire team froze in shock. I didn't know where to hide. The judge cleared his throat and said that our victory was annulled due to a violation of the rules. The audience booed and started throwing cans at me. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore and ran away. After this incident, Smith was fired and I stayed at home all day. But one night, someone rang the doorbell. It turned out that Coach Smith came to my house. It was so unexpected. He said that he now worked at another school and offered to become the captain of his women's team. Smith was training girls now and said I was the one who inspired him. I didn't know what to say, but suddenly my mother came out to us. She came up to me and gently hugged me. She heard Smith's words and said that she would support me if I decided to continue training. I almost cried with happiness. It had been so long since we hugged. My mother apologized for not paying attention to me for so long. She regretted it once. She also did not apologize to my father, and he left forever. She didn't want to lose me. As soon as the coach left, I rushed to school. My mom helped me understand that it was never too late to ask for forgiveness. When I ran into the gym, the guys were already going home. Among them, I saw Nick with equipment and a bag of water. I called the guys and said I needed to apologize to everyone, and I understood that I would never regain their trust. But being part of their team was the best thing that had ever happened to me in my life. I started to leave, but Evan stopped me. He said he wasn't angry. He was actually delighted with my bravery. The guys applauded and said that they wouldn't have won without me anyway. After 6 months in Coach Smith's team, I became captain. Evan's mom was on the mend, and he and I hung out all the time. Thanks to the support of my loved ones, I will win many more victories, and I will definitely never feel alone again.